Well, it has been a minute, Mother Academics. I hope you've been doing your reading. Well, hello and welcome back to Mother Academia. Yes, I know it has been a bit since we've had a video. We did that whole end of summer into the beginning of autumn thing, and that is a busy time for homeschool moms. I don't need to tell you that, but I was onboarding a second formal student. I was also just enjoying the last bit of summer holiday, and I do love the beginning of autumn because it's me. And I feel like I can make all the autumn jokes I want because, as you can imagine, my life from grades 3 through the end of college were nothing but seasonal jokes. There were, of course, the calling me spring, summer, winter. Then there were these sad years in which young boys learned that my name Autumn rhymes with bottom. You can imagine how that went for me. And you know, it did not end there. No, these jokes continued into college when I would often get from the young Romeo, "I hope I do not fall for you." So now it is my turn to make the seasonal jokes. I have earned the right. And I do love the beginning of autumn, as I think most people do. I think it is everyone's secret favorite season. Summer people don't come at me. But we are going to catch up today. And I'm only going to catch us up, at least on my own Notion, up through, I think, the middle end of July. It's where I've frozen the Notion in time so that I didn't have so much to update on. Because yes, we are behind here, but we are not behind in Common House, where we did still have our quarterly call for the Mother Academic. It's the symposium is what we call it. And we get together and we talk about the actual process of doing Mother Academia, as well as what we're learning in Mother Academia. We have one more call. We do them quarterly. So we have the next one is right before the 21st of December. You are more than welcome to join us, even if it's just for one call. And then we'll close out our first year of Mother Academia. And I'm really excited to see, please tell me below if you are someone who's been doing this on their own or with friends, because that's the thing as well, what everyone's gonna do next year. Like what you're gonna tweak, what you're gonna maintain, how many of you didn't finish your plans. That was one of our big talking points, was none of us think we're gonna finish our plans. We all bit off maybe a little more than we could chew, or we just started later. And that's actually part of the lifelong self-education. You are continually learning. If this list is not completed by December 31st, I have not failed. I will just continue going after the new year. So if anyone needed to hear that because you feel like you are behind or failing or something like that, you are not. So today, I usually do like one idea I've learned or had while doing my Mother Academia in that section, and then we go through the Notion for those who are interested in seeing my actual updated thing, plus some of you are just Notion nerds and you're like Notion. So the topic of the day is inhabiting, and I have it for two points. I guess I have 2 points, not have it for. I have 2 points. Don't be, this tea is not offering me any support. This is left over from our school lessons earlier today, and I just left it on the table. So I could probably use a cuppa right about now. All right, inhabiting. So I have not talked about Latin much after the first couple of Mother Academia videos, and maybe you rightly guessed that Latin was a little more than I could chew this year. It always seems to be, but that's true. I changed how I was doing my Latin, and then we're gonna talk about that now. So I don't think it's wrong to say, it does feel like a cop-out, that I learned more about how I would like to learn Latin this year. I started off with Wheelox, and a lot of you have recommended that. It's used in a lot of collegiate courses. It's very well recommended, right? And I liked it because it taught Latin the way I learned Spanish. Now, I did not learn Spanish with any sort of poetic mode. I started Spanish in 6th grade, I think is when North Carolina Public Schools started it. Maybe it was 5th grade, but I'm pretty sure we started earnestly in 6th grade, and then I took it all the way up through 11th, and then I took a year in college too. So I did a lot of my 501 grammar book. If you had the 501 verbs book, then bless you, because you also had to spend your time writing out conjugations for verbs all the time and checking the weird ones in there. So I did a lot of like vocabulary list, verb conjugations practice, not a lot of no reading stories, learning nursery rhymes, just hearing the language regularly spoken. It was very broken down into parts and pieces, and I did learn Spanish pretty well. Am I fluent? Not at all. Could I talk about anything outside of like basic conversational topics? Not really, but can I move around in a Spanish-speaking country? Well, it's not too bad. Like, I can do it. I even used a lot of Spanish when I lived in Italy because it was similar enough, although the Italians really didn't like it, so I don't recommend that. But it was like enough to get me where I needed to be on certain occasions. So it did, in a certain way, work. Now, when I learned Italian, I learned through immersion language classes. So I was living in Florence and I took classes where the book was all in Italian, the teacher only spoke Italian. And I loved that and I learned much faster, but I had a really skilled teacher. And I felt like that was my issue with Wheelbox. I did not have a great teacher, person to person, saying the sounds for me, reviewing things with me, being able to read these passages like fluently, as in beautifully, like with great elocution, with great pronunciation. I was trying to do it. I was trying to find recordings online. It just wasn't really working. Now, of course, I'd also made this video about poetic knowledge. It was something that I was thinking a lot for my children when it came to Latin language, because we started Latin this year. And I really wanted something for them that was not like what I had in public school. I didn't want a 501 verbs book. I didn't want just memorizing a list of vocabulary words based on a unit study. I wanted to give them something rich and story-based. But how was I supposed to do that when I, the instructor, do not have what is needed to offer it? This is like continually the problem for a woman who is not classically educated but is trying to offer something really rich to her children. So if you ever feel frustrated that you are not able to be the caliber or the most ideal version of the teacher you would like to be encouraged. First, you are offering your children something really good with what you have available and what you can do. And two, they will in turn be able to offer their children even more. When we think of building a cathedral, we are probably not going to be the generation to build the whole thing. That is okay. But we do know we are building into something magnificent, eternal, and absolutely mind-blowingly beautiful, but we're only doing a little part of it. Like, we might just be laying down the bricks at the bottom. So I hope that encourages you, because as I was studying Latin and how I wanted to study Latin with my children, I was feeling really discouraged because I couldn't give them what I knew would be best for them until, I will say, I did find a program. The University of Dallas has a Latin through Stories program, which I am a huge fan of. We are now using it in our home. I have shared it through Common House. I've shared it with a lot of people. If you're doing the children's tradition, I shared it with Amanda and it made it into TCT. So I think it's really wonderful, and it does equip a teacher who does not have the background knowledge they need to still offer a poetic version of Latin instruction to their children. It's a lot of church Latin, which actually is great. Side note on the Latin. So part of the University of Dallas's program is using Latin phrases that children already know. Now, this of course depends on your church tradition, but if you make the sign of the cross, then you can learn In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, Amen. I can only say it and hear it the way the priest in the Florence Cathedral, the Duomo, like Brunelleschi's dome, the Duomo, said it, which was always In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, Amen. Like that. So that's how my children also make the sign of the cross and say it. But anyways, all that to say, you use bits of either church Latin or church phrasing, use nursery rhymes, songs like Row, Row, Row Your Boat, but in Latin, and the children learn in a more idea way. Like Charlotte Mason would love this. It's full ideas, clothed with all their beauty, given to children in the language, so they can hear the rhythm and the pattern and the sing-songiness. Because, to put a little on Dorothy Sayers, I love the Lost Tools of Learning. It's how I tripped into the classical wardrobe. But she says she is not an instructor. She's not trying to act like she is, but she has this one thing in particular about Latin. And a lot of classical schools and homeschooling program are built on this idea that children are just poll parrots. And so just like they like to run around reciting Ring Around the Rosie, you can just get them to go amo, amas, amat, like I love, you love, he, she, it loves. And it's the same because it's just parroting. That's not true. Ring Around the Rosie, Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars have beautiful ideas in them. They're musical in their expression. That is why a child likes to recite them all the time. Amo, amas, amat doesn't actually do anything. It's rote reciting with no connection to the idea. It's not the same thing. And so University of Dallas, the Latin through Stories program, actually touches on that students do need to be given full ideas and that they should be able to enjoy learning language from this poetic, receptive posture. Anyways, all that to say, I've been very upset with my own Latin studies because I was not making progress. Part of it was the instructor need, part of it was the approach, but also part of it we just have to acknowledge was that I definitely bit off more than I could chew. I had 3 courses of study, which felt kind of like I'd taken on 24 credit hours in a semester, and it was just too much for a mom who is homeschooling, who works from home, who is like very involved. I run a co-op. I like doing stuff outside. I like having free time to just contemplate and meander through the woods. And so it was just too much. I think language needs to be touched most days of the week, and I just did not have the time or bandwidth to do it. And so I took my humble pie and decided that I would rather inhabit the language, back to inhabiting, inhabit the language the right way, even if I cannot fly through my coursework, my course book, and read Potter by the end of the year, which was my goal. It's not even remotely going to happen. And from that, just enjoy learning it the right way, even if it's more slowly, because by the way we are doing it through the stories and through the rhymes, like we have Winnie the Pooh and Beatrice Potter in Latin, things like that, we are inhabiting the language. We are getting inside of it. It makes sense in the context of our life and how we use the language. And we have a lot of fun doing it together. So that's the first little bit, which is more of an update on Latin and a little bit about inhabiting the language, which I think is important. But mainly I wanted to talk about inhabiting the language for those of you who are studying some sort of historical angle. So one of mine has been medieval studies, the medieval time, and I really enjoyed that. I mean, it's a large, we're talking about, almost 1,000 years worth of time. The dates are kind of, people argue about them, but about 1,000 years. That's a lot of time, right? And I read both modern takes on the time, the medieval time, what they thought about different things. I had very few of those books because I wanted to read books actually written from the time. And then I read historians, a lot of church writings, things like that for the medieval time. And that was great because I was getting in the mind and seeing the world as a medieval would. But I am ready to tell you all that if you are studying any sort of history, you need to have some really good historical fiction. Maybe written during that time, maybe just a really talented writer, a modern writer, maybe sometime in between those two, medievals and now, who could write a really good historical fiction novel. Because I decided to pick up Kristin Lavransdatter, the trilogy. And this is a trio of books actually by Sigrid and Undset, and everyone in the classical world, pretty much, you shouldn't say everyone, but almost everyone, will list it as a book you must read, right? Like, especially if you're a Catholic classical educator, like it's definitely on the list. And I had heard about it, knew about it, but did not know what it was about. And I found a copy that I found in a box at a yard sale, so it was like 50 cents, $1. And it was a Penguin paperback. It looked like a romance novel on the front. I was kind of confused, but you know who else they do that to? Elizabeth Goudge. They put really bad Harlequin novel type covers on her books, and I don't understand why they do that to her. But they did the same thing with The Wreath, which is the first of the Lavransdatter series. So I had this book, and I was actually up in the piles of books upstairs in storage trying to find something else, and I saw it earlier this summer and thought, oh, maybe I'll just read that this summer just for fun, not knowing that it was about medieval Norway, having no idea there was a medieval historical fiction book. So I pull it out, whatever, I'm reading the back, I'm like, no way. Well, I wonder if I could like put this on my Mother Academia, if this would be a good fit. I'm reading the intro about the author. She's like a national treasure, apparently is a phenomenal writer, has all these other books, is just renowned for her skill and her eloquence and the beauty in which she could write. And so I think, okay, I'll read this book. I'll like put this on my list. Maybe it'll just be like a fun little summer read. Oh my goodness. I did not come out of her world for 48 hours. I don't know who fed my children. I don't know when I slept. I don't know anything that happened those 2 days because I was so sucked in to this first book of the trilogy. That is inhabiting. When you feel like you are breathing the air of the age, when you are seeing the world, you are caring about the cares they would have had at that time. And that's hard because there are things now that even maybe a conservatively minded classical mother might kind of giggle or make fun of that would have been reverently held back in the medieval age. So you care about the same cares that a woman of this time period would care about, and your heart is breaking over the same things. Some of it because the writing is so good you have entered the world. Some of it because we are all just persons and there are commonalities to all times and places. There are questions of the soul, pains of life, things that we all experience that are still, they still make your heart beat or break in every time and place. You enter that is how you get to know a time and place. And Charlotte Mason talks about this. Charlotte Mason talks about how you can study an age by studying the life of a few people from it. Knowing how they ate, how they slept, how they churched, how they worked, how they were in the social marketplace, like all of these different things. And you can understand the age. And that's why often in a Charlotte Mason curriculum, you will study like 3 biographies as you work through a certain time period when the children are younger, because they're so in it, they're inside of the thing, that they see the world actually as if they were in it, rather than maybe like, I'm not even saying like a textbook call out of a timeline and a couple bullet points, but even just like the medievals believed this, that doesn't really grab all of you. The trilogy, I mean, I understand when people talk about it now. I couldn't stop talking about it. I got a lot of people to read it. In fact, one of my friends, I saw her maybe like a couple days after she started reading it. We were at a creek day with some co-op friends just for a summer fun. And I asked, if she had started it, and she said, I'm just really annoyed I have to be here right now because I just want to be home reading that book. So I will give you a quick tip though on the book. So the Penguin Classics has a female translator. And I cannot remember her name because I didn't know it mattered. Again, I got that book from a box at a yard sale. Then I loved it, and when that happens, I tend to go and find the beautiful old hardback version, which are right there. Can you see those? Oh. These right here, these beautiful old hardbacks right here. They are translated by a man whose name I also don't know. They're not as good. That's all I can say for you. So I did not realize this was like a huge thing in the Lavender Daughter world. Which translation do you go with? His is pretty archaic and clunky, and I read a lot of old books, and I'm saying that. I could not put down the Penguin Classics version. It was beautifully translated. It flowed so naturally. It was really lovely. So I go and buy these, and I start the second one, and I was like moving, kind of like, it's not quite grabbing me the exact same way. Switch back to Penguin Classics, same thing again, fantastic. So I recommend getting the Penguin Classics version, or the version that woman translated. I think she did a phenomenal job. It seems like the internet thinks that as well. So I wanted to make sure you knew that before you do what I did and track down 3 different copies to make sure you get the best price, to make sure you get the old ones, because while they look beautiful on the shelf, I probably will not touch them. I was also really tickled then. So of course, I was telling all my friends to read this series, and then my friend Amanda, the TCT, was like, of course, John Sr. has this on his list in the upper years. So there you go. If you don't believe me, believe John Sr. Okay, so that's kind of my bit on Inhabiting, why I think it's important in historical fiction. It allows you to breathe the air of the age. Also, I was going to say Lewis has a similar thing. The atmosphere is, I think his word he uses, the atmosphere should be so rich in good writing that you feel like you are breathing it. Like when the Narnian air touches the children, they slowly become a little more themselves and a little more kings and queens of Narnia. The same should happen when you read a really good book. And I think that's why Inhabiting through great living literature is vitally important in historical studies as well as in language studies. So let's do the notion. Okay, so welcome to the notion. One thing that I wanted to note, because I am using quite heavily, I'm relying on St. John's reading list for their summer cohort. And so that means I'm reading a lot of great literature, some of it the best that's ever been written or studied, and I'm only reading portions of it. And I just wanted to leave a note in one of these videos that I'm not quite enjoying that. I understand why a school program that must either meet certain standards, or they're trying to work with adults who have jobs and they're trying to make this a program that is achievable or accessible, even while quite difficult, I would say, that they have to do this. I'm not really sure too much behind like their methodology of choosing this way, but it really does rub my Mason sensibilities the wrong way to just jump in and out of books very quickly, only getting snippets of it. It reminds me of reading an abridged version of a classic, which I would never do. And so I have not enjoyed that. I've learned that this year, that while I enjoyed following their list, I think it's been helpful, I would ultimately reduce the list to be able to read full books. Now, do I necessarily want to sit and read like the entire history of Rome? Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, rather, right here, given. No, I think it's like 6 full volumes in my set, but I think there's probably good fruit that comes from working through something like that, laboring like that. So anyways, I just wanted to say that because I have made progress, but it's because I didn't have to read full books. So this is just, again, like I said, up until the end of July, and then the next time I'll like put my notes in here to update till now it's October. So I could switch these over for you. So I did read 2 parenting books. I talked about how I often have one going. I never plan them, I just sort of find them. One was Raising Emotionally Strong Boys by David Thomas, and the other was Parenting Towards the Kingdom. And both of those I thought were great, and both are finished. So we're done with that. Over here, finished some Shakespeare. And then, oh, this is great. So Eleanor Parker, I've been reading Winters in the World over the course of the year. We have just hit autumn, and so I can finish the last quarter of the book, and so I should finish that one up shortly. As you can see here, I had sections of St. Augustine and sections of Homer's The Odyssey. And I mean, The Odyssey, either one of these are books that you should read and contemplate and chew very slowly and are worth like a lifetime's worth of thought and consideration. So it just felt wrong to be scooching through these. I don't think I would do that again. Let's see here. I did finish my Dante, which I talked about excessively earlier in the year, and also all of my tutor resources I had, like Dr. Baxter's book, the course from Hillsdale, which they have a lot of free courses. Always check and see if Hillsdale has something based on what you're reading. I really enjoyed Susanna Clark. I loved Piranesi, and I also loved Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. She has Ladies of Grace Adieu and other stories, which are short stories that tie into the world of Strange and Norrell, and that was a really fun, quick read. I just enjoyed it at the park over a couple of days. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I have Tolkien's version, the translation, really easy to read. Obviously, here is my Kristen Lavransdatter. I did not put all three in here because I really added her in as like a bonus. I had to take something else away. I can't remember what I took, but the rest I just am working on as like fun reads for myself. See, again, not many Plutarch's Lives, but I read those for fun sometimes. I do have a history degree, so that is fun for me. And then also we'll be covering them with my children eventually, so we'll work through all of them. Let's see here. Okay, St. John Chrysostom, always good to be reading Early Church Father. That should probably just be a practice everyone maintains. And then I started putting in the 1,000 Good Books, which is the list from John Sr. that I've referenced in a lot of my books ever since a friend recommended it to me, and it's become like the list I recommend to anyone who asks me for a starting list. I need to make a full Notion for it though, but I just started putting these in. I did it for like a couple of weeks over the summers we were reading, because I have both read alouds for my kids and then 1,000 Good Books. And there's a nursery section of the 1,000 Good Books, which is 0 to 7 years. I think we've read most of them, which has been like a goal. My husband and I have just been reading them to the kids, not all this summer, just over the course of their lives. And my oldest is 7, so they're all 7 and under. And so it's been fun to put them in here. I don't really know where to stick them right now, so we did Jackanapes. The Bad Child's Book of Beasts is like a 10-minute read. And then the Book of Nonsense, we finished Edward Lear's Book of Nonsense, which I loved. The Pied Piper of Hamelin. There are a couple of great options for that one. Maria Edgeworth is someone recommended by Charlotte Mason, but also I see her referenced in places like Louisa May Alcott and other things, so I think it used to be a very commonplace read for families. We've really enjoyed the stories in there. Lazy Lawrence was my kid's favorite so far. We're not finished with the book, but so far. Okay, more Dante. We finished Dante. Lyric poetry for St. John's was just like lyric poetry from these authors. It didn't list which poems, so I just read a smattering of them. We're calling it good. I enjoyed it. It was nice. So I don't have anything there. And that gets us down to The Winters in the World, which we're still reading. At the Back of the North Wind, my kids didn't take to it the way I thought they would. I was surprised. They liked George MacDonald. I don't know if it was just a bad time, like that I picked it. It wasn't the right time for them, so we just kind of shelved it, but eventually we'll go back to it because it's George MacDonald. And then from there, I will not tell you where I went. You will see next time. But that is the update. I'm sorry to have taken so long, except not sorry at all, because I've been busy baking complicated treats at 2 p.m. and playing outside with my kids. And I hope you get some of that as well, even while you try to read and stretch your mind and hopefully ultimately grow your soul. See you guys next time.